Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Shalini Sharma, the founder director of Global Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals. Today, we are here along with you, speaking on a very special topic, the topic that is not much explored yet, the topic that is just at the start. People are not still thinking about the sector, and that sector is an automotive and aerospace sector. We talk quite a lot about the circular economy, environmental aspects, sustainability aspects, social aspects, and governance aspects. But when it comes to the manufacturing industries, we are just focusing ourselves on the industry clusters or some particular type of manufacturing units. But the vehicles, the automotive sector, the aerospace sector is quite an intensive manufacturing sector and also having a short and long term of environment, social and governance impact. Today, we are going to talk about circular economy in automotive sector. And along with us, we have very key experts from this sector. We have Mr. Praveen from Government of Telangana. And we have Mr. Sujit Samadar, ex-consultant, Niti Aayog, Government of India. Along with these experts, we are going to proceed with session on circular economy in automotive sector. I have my colleague, Mr. Vakun Banerjee. I request him to provide the background and introduce the speakers and start the session today.
Thank you, Dr. Shalini. So in the past 15 years, we've noted that the automotive industry is dramatically overshooting its estimated carbon and resource budgets. Embracing the circular economy has become even more critical since COVID-19 has hit economies hard, putting pressure on consumers and manufacturers and driving home the need to be watchful of resources. Research by Accenture has shown that circular economy approaches are an essential piece of the puzzle in efforts to reduce carbon emissions per passenger per kilometer by up to 75% by 2030. To meet the Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius, Greenpeace has called on all major automakers to urgently phase out diesel and petrol cars, including hybrids, by no later than 2028. The new Vehicle Scrappage Policy 2021, which was introduced in May 2021, gives a new identity to India in the mobility and auto sector and is aimed at phasing out unfit and polluting vehicles in an environment-friendly manner and to help modernize the vehicle fleet. Together, we need to raise our ambitions on circularity and build a new automobility ecosystem that seeks not merely to do less harm, but rather to enable new sustainable opportunities. And with that, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Praveen. Mr. Praveen is currently the director with the Government of Telangana, heading the aerospace and defense sector. He is the lead in policy development, infrastructure planning, skill development, industry partnerships, and investment promotion initiatives for integrated ecosystem development. Sir is an IIM Ahmedabad alumnus and Chevening Gurukul Fellow from the Department of Politics and International Relations, University of Oxford. He has also received the Best State Awards in 2020 and 2018 from the Union Ministry of Civil Aviation for the state with the most progressive outlook into aviation and aerospace sector. Mr. Praveen, we'd love to hear your insights. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vaikunte. In fact, it's a pleasure to be here. Auto is not a sector I handle. I normally speak on aerospace and defense. The first time I'm speaking on auto. But the fact remains that there's a very important theme which cuts across all manufacturing industries per se. So I think what follows in aerospace is more or less applicable in terms of auto when it comes to sustainable manufacturing, waste reduction, as well as planning for and designing for the future of mobility. And the way we look at it, the future of mobility will have a convergence on road transport and air transport. Now that people are talking about the UAVs, which will transport, which is more like a personalized car which can travel on the road, fly off, and then again land somewhere. A couple of things on the circular economy. In fact, a lot of discussion around it has been, guided by the World Economic Forum Accenture study and the McKinsey study, which has been referred all across. In fact, a lot of industry amalgamation or other work is going around 2-3 key things. One is EV on the electrical vehicles bit of it. because more there are, electrical vehicle, the drive is initially been, in fact, it's not a new story. There has been efforts which were done earlier in terms of bringing in hybrid vehicles, etc., which didn't kind of quite become successful then because of various reasons. One is the cost, second thing is the efficiency, third is probably the availability of charging infrastructure, etc. But now things have changed, just like the what you have seen, the mobile revolution, from all those Nokia days to the current scale where unimaginable level of penetration has happened. The same sort of revolution is expected in terms of automobiles when it comes to the design and manufacture bit of it. Primarily, it will be dealt by the electrification of vehicles, is that it saves on three aspects. One is the cost of operation will be extremely low. Second is the kind of pollution, the tailpipe pollution, what we are seeing. In fact, this just comes from recently, 2 days back. Last week we had an Indo-French conference on with a large number of aerospace and defense and other sectoral companies who are present, French companies who are present in Hyderabad. They didn't have any complaints regarding the policy, the infrastructure support, or probably any sort of comfort which they required from a manufacturing destination. But the only point which came up was the extent, the worry regarding rising pollution, the particular, the kind of it's as good as that in terms. If you look at the night sky, we won't see stars here. I mean, not that it's that bad, but we still look at the clear blue skies of UK or probably any of the other foreign countries and seen that what is different. It's only the kind of pollution. I think as a country we need to kind of take hard steps towards reducing that, and that is probably the reason why the government of India has also fast-tracked the conversion from BS4 to BS6 norms when it comes to pollution in a much aggressive timeline, which effectively means that the refiners will have to kind of really upgrade themselves to produce the right kind of oil, right kind of fuel. The manufacturers will have to kind of produce the conventional vehicles in a way which is much more superior in terms of how they manage the fuel. And more importantly, because of COVID, I think there is a lot of concern regarding the economics of purchasing, running, operating a vehicle. So that has to come down substantially. So the circularity of manufacturing, when it comes to circularity, I mean, rather than kind of producing more and more from the new resources, trying to recycle, trying to create, design, as well as implement a lot of operational practices which can help the kind of reusability of materials. Because any new manufacturing process will involve a lot of metal extraction. So there's energy used there, there's a lot of pollution, there's a lot of other social cost to kind of extracting minerals, etc. So right from that practice to probably metal formation, metal reduction, what happens in a conventional manufacturing process. The waste, many times what happens is that many of them go into the landfill. Some of them are reusable, many of them are not reusable. The landfills are also becoming, because the land costs are increasing, there's concerns regarding pollution, etc. So that is again becoming too short in terms of availability, and the cost of landfill is also increasing. So going forward, I think the pressure will be more on the automotive industry to kind of find means to see that the overall life cycle cost of manufacturing, running, and recycling is to the minimum. So towards which I think a lot of efforts are now being looked at into, right from the design aspect to the kind of materials being used to the kind of modularity being kind of conceived in terms of how best one can kind of reuse, replace, and rather than thrashing away an entire vehicle. In fact, recently, I think in aerospace, I can share the example of 3D printing, how 3D printing has kind of now helped in terms of making these old gears, heavy gears, which are part of the aerospace components, which earlier used to be scrapped, are now kind of brought to use back in life by using, wherever there's a wear and tear, probably that can be modified and, put back into use. And that, again, any MRO for that matter, and when it talks about larger craft, etc., the expensive vehicles, we look for more of repair and kind of trying to extend the life of it. While when it comes to a car which has got a lifetime and with the vehicle scrappage policy coming in, probably after within a time span of 10 years or 15 years, you either need to decide whether you want to kind of go on with the same vehicle or probably want to kind of really put in the additional expenditure and see to it that it is roadworthy. And going forward, I think the trend, what is foreseen is that the cost of kind of extending the lifespan will be much more because there will be a frequent testing evaluation cost which will be added to it, plus a green cess which is told that will again make it much more expensive to extend the life. So the kind of trend will be more towards scrapping the old vehicles and getting onto the new ones. In Telangana, I can say that 2020, we had our EV policy launched. And since then, several manufacturers have come in. We have got in two-wheelers, Gapton, Pure EV, in three-wheelers, Gaia Motors, ETO Motors, HEO. In four-wheelers, we got Triton. Triton just recently kind of launched their EV luxury car in Hyderabad. In buses, Olitra and Mitra have kind of set up their manufacturing. And so there are a lot more manufacturers have taken on to the incentives and the kind of policy benefits which the government has announced and started setting the manufacturing units here. The government also understands that setting up charging stations will be a challenge. So we are now prioritizing in, trying some investment from our own to do that, in partnership with the OEMs. So, and going forward, I think that's what is generally getting predicted that after 2025, I think most of the new cars which will be manufactured or which will be kind of purchased by the consumer will be. So, this which I have with respect to the consumption part of it, but in terms of manufacturing, I think when we design, you mentioned about the manufacturing parks, etc. So we are trying to see as much as possible have common facilities and shared services kind of brought in, such that more investment, there is investment optimization which is possible, which again requires that across the industry there should be some design standardizations which will enable usage of common facilities. So I think that would be another trend which you might end up seeing, and will be encouraged in future. And the incentives which might be there for even in the exchange policy, exchanging an old vehicle to a new vehicle, etc., comes under the scrappage policy. But I think even the manufacturers will find it much more interesting to incentivize this exchange, just like what we have in mobile exchanges these days. An iPhone 13 coming in will kind of have an exchange offer of an iPhone 12, and which is a substantially good value for the customer. I think at the end of the day, it all boils down to the economics, how it works in terms of the savings achieved vis-a-vis the efficiency, as well as the the pollution control and the other goals which we are trying to kind of achieve through this. So there's going to be a sea change in terms of policies, in terms of industry response, as well as in terms of the kind of consumer behavior when it comes to the circularity, what we're trying to achieve in this industry as a whole. I think I will end here and probably wait for further queries or questions. Thank you.
I think, Praveen, you, as you beautifully said, that all over it well down to the economics, that how it really works. There is also a scrappage policy that has emerged from Government of India. And how do you look at it, especially for this sector?
Question to me?
Yes, yes.
See, the scrappage policy is again an aggressive policy, which the Government of India has built. In fact, India is always known as a jugaad country, right? And we try to kind of extend the life of anything what is there through whatever means. But at the cost of, because that again will be at the cost of any sort of possibility of innovation, any possible, because the objectives of circularity, the objectives of SDG can't be achieved by kind of tackling one end of the spectrum alone. The entire supply chain needs to be brought into discipline. And that is possible only with such rigorous measures. I believe with the extent of vehicles which need to be replaced rather through the scrappage policy, on one side, it doesn't say that compulsorily they have to do it. If it is roadworthy, the permissions will be given, though there's a certain cost attached to it. But it it is a very good policy to ensure that the vehicles which are plying on the road are safe for the guy who is kind of a guy or the lady who is kind of driving it, as well as people who are at the effect of it in terms of road safety. That is one. Second, pollution. A big check on the pollution norms vis-a-vis. In fact, that is getting much more stringent day by day. So I don't think that even if you try to extend the life, it would go beyond probably 5 years in that front. So a large number of these vehicles need to be replaced. So it's a huge opportunity for new manufacturers. And given that the cost of running of EV vehicle vis-a-vis a petrol or a diesel vehicle is in the range of, say, 1/10 of the cost of a conventional running a conventional vehicle is what is generally being told right now. And I'm sure that with the increase in technology and the advancement in technology, this ratio is further going to widen, and particularly so because the conventional fuels are also getting much more expensive. So the shift is quite imminent, and this will be aided by the vehicle scrappage policy. So all in all, I think it's a fairly fabulous policy in line with the circular goals as well as with the the EV goals which Government of India as well as state governments have come up with. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'll request you to stay for a few more minutes with us. And we are having now our speaker, Mr. Sujit Samadar. Vaikunth, I request you to kindly introduce.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shalini. Thank you, Praveen, for that excellent presentation on the opportunity on the sector. I'm going to be talking about that, but just one question to you, Praveen, before I start my presentation. The Government of India had announced that there would be a relaxation in the registration cost of vehicles. They are between 6 to 8% or somewhere even up to 10% of the cost of a vehicle, new vehicle, is the registration charges. So what is the government of, what is that this Government of India has said that this can be up to 25%. So which means if it is 25%, that means you're saving about 1.5% of the total cost of the vehicle in terms of registration. That's a very, very big incentive for many people to get rid of their old vehicles and avail that benefit and buy a new one. So what is your government thinking in terms of this number? Is it going to be closer to 0 or is it going to be closer to 25?
In fact, good point. I think our policy is a little bit more centric towards getting the manufacturing here. So we give substantial incentives to those manufacturers who are, planning to set up their facilities here in Telangana. So there is an exemption for the charges, etc. A much larger scale. In fact, much more than what it is there. In fact, we probably might come up with revised policies also towards that, but there is a good level of incentive. And more importantly, what we felt is more than these incentives, what really also will drive the market is a steady demand. So the government is considering kind of giving orders to those manufacturers who are kind of setting up their facilities here for the end-to-end mile transportation from the metros, for probably the municipal waste movement, and probably even the electrical buses, a mandate given to the transport corporation to kind of move a large chunk of their vehicles to EV side of things. So I think there's a sustained initial order which these companies can get. And the rest is actually added bonus, right, in terms of where it. All in all, I think we have fairly aggressive incentives being planned for, EVs.
Yes, I think that should be music to a large number of players in this market. I'm sure with the kind of incentives and policies that your government has got, you will find many people onto it. So I'll request to share screen. I don't know how to share screen here. It's here. Can I share screen? I'll take about 10 minutes for a short presentation. And I will be talking about two things. One is about the automotive recycling. And I will also introduce something which is very close to my heart, is about aircraft recycling. So that is the next big opportunity that we are looking at. So I'll be speaking a bit about that. The first paper on aircraft recycling in India was prepared by me. and that was in consultation with Boeing US. So hopefully that will open up a new sector of work. So can I share screen? Do I have the
Yes,
rights?
yes, you have sharing rights. You can share it. Bakun, can you introduce in the meantime?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I can't see myself. I hope you guys can see me or whatever.
Yes, sir, we can.
Can you
We
see my
can't see,
screen?
we can't see your screen yet, sir.
Okay, now I guess you'll start seeing it now.
Yeah, it is there.
Yes, sir.
Coming? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So as I said, this short presentation is on automotive and aero recycling, and to just give a heads up on what the opportunity in the future is going to be. These are some photographs that I have personally taken in Delhi. So I can see every time I see a scrap vehicle on the road, I say, oh, wow, that's another 40,000 rupees lying there. That's 1 lakh rupees lying there. That's 30,000 rupees lying there, and nobody claiming it. So there's a lot of latent value which is lying on our roads, which has to be realized to be put back into the economy to create not only additional resources of materials, but also a huge number of jobs and jobs at a level which is very, very important for us. You know, at the skilled, the semi-skilled level. That's where the maximum number of jobs are required. And since the industry requires a fair amount of talent, not only the semi-skilled, but also some highly skilled production managers and people on that will be brought in. Commodities trading will be brought in. It's a huge cycle. We'll talk about the market for this as we go along. So this is what I'll cover. Automotive sector, look at the policy, look at the business opportunity. There's some slides on aircraft recycling. This is very, very confidential piece. There are not many people in this country who are talking about aircraft recycling, in fact, across the world. So I'll just share some slides there. And we are trying to do something with a large company in India to set up aircraft recycling in India. We're looking for a suitable location, and I hope Praveen will give us a good location to set up world's largest aircraft recycling base. We'll look at some challenges and end with a conclusion. So the Indian automotive sector is very, very large, and I think these are well known. Once the electric vehicle also comes in, we are already the largest manufacturer of two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and tractors, and fifth largest automobile manufacturer. We're going to have probably be the fourth largest automobile manufacturer at the end of this year. We have 66 automobile manufacturing companies in India, employs 32 million people, 7% to GDP, and about 24 million two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and 4 million cars. And this is growing at about 8% per year. So in a few years down the line, we'll probably have about 40 million vehicles of all types coming on the roads. In 2018, as per Vahan data, there were 230 million vehicles. I think it's probably about 250 to 260 million vehicles on the road already. The number of ELVs has been calculated by different people on different numbers, but I go by this number that 22 million vehicles will be end of life by the criteria that the government has announced, of which 80% will be two-wheelers, 3% will be three-wheelers, 3% will be commercial and goods, and 14% will be cars by number. By value, everything changes the other way around. The other thing is that even if you have a business as usual growth, you still need about 50 to 70 million metric tons of steel, which will be approximately equal to 15% of the total production of steel in 2030, at least. My sense is that it will be close to 35% of the total production of steel that India would do in 2030, just to meet the requirements of the automobile industry. Therefore, recycling is absolutely necessary. I, for one, think that we need to stop all the stuff on coal, iron, and all that, or at least certainly reduce it to the maximum extent possible, so that we don't play around with climate change anymore. I think we have just taken enough, Earth has taken enough beating on climate change. We have to be very careful how we use the balance of resources that God has given us on Earth. So the automotive sector, the demand drivers are there. We have got a rising middle class. Many of my people tell me, you know, India, poor country, this, that, and all. But I tell them, do you know we have about 400 million people who are middle class, which is almost the same population as that of the US. So whilst as a country, we may have some distorted images of per capita GDP, but remember, we have a huge middle class, and that middle class is three times the size of Japan's population, and almost the size of the US population, who are spending money. So that's not a small population. Plus, we have a huge young population. And after the COVID sort of thing, public transportation has taken a hit and more people are now moving into the two-wheeler market. So that's quite a lot of work that's happening there. On production factors, again, are with us. We have a very skilled labor force with us. We have R&D happening. We have the ARAI. We have so many of these automobile champions who are bringing in new technologies in the sector. Our production costs are very less, and we are now moved to FAME 2 as well, which will again release a lot of vehicles into the market. So I already spoke about total number of registered vehicles. The envelope is well known to all of you, so I'm not going to talk about it. The automotive recycling policy came out. The government of Delhi has issued. I think other governments have also issued this, and some extracts from the vehicle scrapping facility are shown here. It's a huge demand. I mean, I think the incentivization policy by the government is really good in terms of being able to encash a certificate or deposit and have a structure by which you can actually benefit from scrapping the vehicle, and basis that the avail concessions and benefits from buying new vehicles. The other enabling structures that the government has very sensibly brought in is to have this whole concept of fitness tests. So your first fitness test starts at whatever, 2 years, 3 years for commercial vehicles, passenger vehicles after 7, 8 years. And thereafter, every time you want to re-register, you have to pay more money. For example, for a motorcycle, you're paying 500 rupees, but you'll have to pay 1,500 rupees if you want to re-register the vehicle after its end of life, after its usual life is over or it fails this thing. So there is a lot of arbitrage that will come in pushing demand. And therefore, there will be a large incentivization to exchange old vehicles for new vehicles in the interest of safety, as was brought out, in the interest of pollution control, in the interest of less problems. And finally, what the automotive sector is going to do is exactly what the mobile sector has done. You know, I got this phone a couple of years ago, but there's nothing I can do with it today because, you know, its parts are not available. Nobody wants to maintain it. And if I want to sell it, I can only sell it for a cheap price. I have to buy a new one every 3 years. Fortunately, in the vehicle segment, we have not come to that level. But believe me, in the next 5 years, particularly when EVs come into the place, nobody will own an EV for longer than 5 years. After 5 years, that EV will have to be scrapped because of the way EVs are designed. So they will reduce that cost, you'll recover that money, at the same time have enough surpluses to buy new vehicles. So the Ministry of Steel also brought out a very notification, which you know, and most important thing was they were looking at role of OEMs, which was brought up in the steel scrap recycling policy. This is being very, very roughly resisted by the automobile OEMs. They carry a large amount of plot because they contribute to 7% of GDP. And in turn, that means at least 15% and 28% is the GST that is applicable. So they pay a lot of taxes to the government. So they have a lot of clout. But I think citizen movements have to take precedence. And we have to make sure that OEMs manufacturing vehicles should be responsible for EPR responsibilities as well. In the case of Telangana, as the ELV system is being put into place, I think it's vitally important that the take-back policy for ELVs should also be in place concurrently. Otherwise, this will all go off to some landfills and polluting and everything else will get lost. My request is kindly look back at the take-back policies for ELVs, which has to be a mandatory requirement for all ELV manufacturers in any state. So I think these are all things that we have said. We don't want to get into it. Of course, for Niti Aayog, we have pushed out the National Material Recycling Policy, and there's another policy which had come out was on the Resource Efficiency Policy. These are all public domain information which can be available to anybody who wants to look at it. And the important points I've highlighted there, the most important thing is that you have to design for recycling, design for dismantling. These documents will have to be produced by the OEMs of vehicles, vehicle manufacturers, who should now put this in public domain as to what is the right way to dismantle a vehicle in the most efficient way so that your resource recovery is very, very high. This is what the Japanese have gone and done. This is what the European Union has done. This is not what China has done, and this is not what US have done. So it's better to follow the Japanese and European Union model, which looks at larger circularity in the conduct of the recycling activities and businesses in the automotive sector. Government of NCD has already issued out some vehicles, and I already noticed a large number of people are getting fined for running old cars, and some of them have probably got jailed as well in the last couple of days. So let's look at what the business opportunity is. If you want to do this, there is a lot of emphasis on the circular economy. It is being shown up in the UNDP, it's showing up in UNCTAD, it's showing up in every G20 mission. It's being discussed at the UNGA. Everybody wants circularity back in, because greenhouse gas emissions, ocean health, mining are all dirty words today. Forest fires in Canada. Can you imagine? Canada had a temperature of 50 degrees centigrade. Canada. You have a look at the NASA pictures which I get of fires all over the world. You'll be amazed at the level at which forests are being decimated because of local heat spots. If you have to save our Earth, we have to work together and make sure that we recycle as much as possible. But also for our own purpose. And I was mentioning this a little while earlier. I've given you some numbers here. Ferrous scrap is already 7 million metric tons per annum. This is going to go to close to 85 million tons of scrap. 70 million tons I've written there, but and 9 million metric tons by 2030, 1.5 million metric tons by in copper, plus rare earths and all of that. So there's a lot of material. If you have to produce 300 million metric tons of steel by 2030 for our country to be among the top 3 in the world in GDP and achieve those double-digit growths that the Prime Minister has said in several of his talks, we need to get our scrap organized. We are importing these numbers, but if the import becomes 70 million metric tons of ferrous, it's going to impact our economy drastically, and it will also impact all the infrastructure plans that we have got. Some of these numbers are well known, so I'm not going into it, but basically net, this is an ideal opportunity to pioneer formal recycling vehicles to tap the emerging mega market. And if those of us who are listening here would actually sense this opportunity, and I certainly hope the government of Telangana will push out some policies which will encourage creation of mega recycling parks, integrated mega recycling parks. And if there's any project on those natures, I'll be very happy to contribute in designing such mega recycling parks which are multi-metal, not just multi-commodity, not just cars, but you can integrate it fully with a lot of vehicles, including factory vehicles, including off-road vehicles, including construction vehicles, including other transportation vehicles which we don't talk about, for example, agricultural. So all of that can be brought into one mega recycling plant. And if you put our shoulder to the task, we can make that into a huge facility which can be unparalleled in the world. Telangana is very beautifully located for that in terms of access, in terms of communications, in terms of the HR base that you have, in terms of the land availability that is possible. All of that is available. So we just need to identify how we can do that project in Telangana. This is just to give you that we are number 5 at 3.4 million. We can actually go to much more than that. 3.4 million is a very small number. We are probably looking at 10 million vehicles per day, per year over the next 5 years. And that means you're looking at a business of about, let's say, $15 billion a year just in recycling itself. The business potential, this slide tells you that end-of-life vehicles in 2015 gives you about 87 the returns in terms of the total commodities that you get, and what would be the worth of that, as you can see on this slide. So how does it work? Basically, we need to have 3 sort of things. One is the dismantling units and collection centers, which have to be smartly designed. This can be done with smart technologies such as blockchain technologies, such as artificial intelligence. A whole lot of augmented reality. That sort of experience can be given to a customer who wants to be part of this recycling setup. Then, of course, we have the material recycling facility, which, as I said, can be designed as a mega facility over a large amount of land with variety of recyclers there who can do shredding, who can do sorting, who can combining it, and also make the end product. So, you don't just bring the ferrous in and convert that into briquettes, but also get to the end product as well. Aluminum scrap comes in from gearbox casings, from engine casings, or whatever, ABC, and then you make gearbox casings and engine casings at the final product. So that whole supply chain is right there. Reduces the cost because you're saving the money on heating that ingot twice over. You just need to heat it once, the aluminum ingot to 650 degrees, put it right into the foundry, you got your product. That's a huge saving in money, huge saving in power. So these are the sort of models that can be designed so that as a composite recycling park, we are looking at a scale, at a price point which will be unparalleled in the world. So of course, what cannot be scoped, like landfill incinerations and all of that, which should be as little as possible. The business model is usually around through collection hubs, dismantling units, and material recycling facility, the central area. We can discuss that in some other format. Now coming to my other subject, that is on Aero Recycling. So basically about 12,000 aircraft will be scrapped in the next 20 years. 8,500 commercial planes to be retired by 2025. That has already started happening. In fact, Tata's fleet of 118 plus 28, which are grounded, I'm more or less certain out of that 28, Tata's is not going to repair them because repairing them and putting them in the air will be far too expensive. Those 28 aircraft are there to be scrapped. So if there is a smart business idea which we can work together on, those 28 aircraft can be recycled, dismantled, recycled, and put back into the spares and recycling loop. And at a minimum, the recovery on that would be not less than $5 to $6 million per aircraft, which is roughly about $150 million of business can be recovered out of those scrapped vehicles. If you do it scrapped vehicles and spares. There's also a large number of military aircraft. We just spoke about the Tata's Airbus program for replacement of Avro aircraft, which is about 80 of them. So they weigh in quite a bit. Nice, very good quality scrap, very good quality materials. We can do that. There's a MiG-27 fleet, which is already waiting for dismantling. We'll have almost about, about 200 helicopters of the Cheetah variety, which will be replaced soon. Contracts are being discussed on that. So there'll be a hell of a lot of military aircraft as well, which can again bring a lot of value. So when we are talking about recycling as an overall plan, this is the sort of project that we could do, a combined aero, auto, and whatever. I don't want to get into plastics and all of that. Forget that. Let's look at metals, where it's rare earths, ferrous, aluminum, cadmium, chromium, that sort of metals. We just want to work on that sector rather than plastics. Plastics can be handled in a different way. So we have 685 aircraft, and I think there's a lot of work to be done. This is basically the utilization cycle. More or less, nobody's buying aircraft for now. The air traffic has come down, but last couple of weeks, it has again started peaking. And once COVID is behind us, we'll find a lot of return in this business. Business travel will become less. So certainly, many of the twin aisle aircraft, Boeing 747, the Airbus 330, these twin aisle long haul aircraft may see some early retirements because the long distance travel may become less and less, and smaller aircraft are becoming more efficient. And let me also share a secret. In a few years from now, we'll be doing hypersonic travel. Nobody's going to go in an aircraft anymore. It's going to be on rockets, which will take you from A to B in a fraction of the time that that aircraft take. So this is in the future. So maybe 10, 15 years down the line, we'll have that. So the earlier we get into the game of aircraft recycling, better for us. This is about aircraft sourcing. There's a whole lot of controls on aircraft recycling, which we should know. There are some infra and technical issues on how to dismantle them, what kind of support that is known. These are things that we know, and we can develop models around this. And but while this is all the rosy picture, there are also some operation challenges. First and foremost, it's feedstock procurement. So when we are drafting the material recycling policy, one of the core areas of work was to look at it in three parts: the demand side, the supply side, and the process part. The process part was well under control. The CPCB guideline, the AIS stuff, etc. But what was not under control was the supply side. That means the supply of feedstock to the facility, because the arbitrage between what the legitimate formal company would pay and what the informal sector would pay for the vehicle was completely in favor of the informal recycling. So to tide over that, the government has very correctly brought in the certificate of deposit, which gives you 1.5% of the value of the vehicle that you are recycling. So suppose you got a bike and which is very old, so you might get 3,000 rupees from the formal recycler, and the informal recycler may give you 3,500 rupees. So to get over that, but I'm going to get 1.5% of the cost of the new bike, and the new bike might cost 60,000 rupees. So that's 900 bucks. So so 500 versus 900. So my total returns now become higher than what I would get if I recycle to the informal person. The second check that was brought in was to bring this whole thing under the GST loop, so that anybody who's procuring scrap would have to trace it, and those scrap sales can be traced by GST receipts. So we shut up the demand side, shut up the supply side, and keep the process under control by various requirements of creating a circular economy model and environmentally safe leakage. So various issues on depollution, it's not all gung-ho. There are lots of hazardous metals, there are hazardous non-metals, and how do we treat them and keep them safe? That is very, very important. There are de-risking technologies on batteries and switches, seatbelts, airbags. There are a hell of a lot of process options. And I feel that for India, the answer does not lie in massive shredders and car crunchers and all of that, but it actually lies in labor-intensive, detailed dismantling. That gives the best the return on the investment in terms of residues, byproducts, and co-products, because all of that becomes saleable. So challenges, of course, shredders we make in India. We don't make nibblers. We have all these separators which can be made, but you can go around this whole problem by not subscribing to this shredding sort of approach towards automobile recycling, but a more dismantling approach. We need to have the quality standards in place. We need to have the logistics and a lot of citizen awareness, information, education. See, at all stages, it is the government's job to create the market. You have to, as a government, create the market, where the seller and the buyer are both clear on what the transaction is, what the expectations are, and there's complete clarity on what is being sold and what is being bought. So to have those systems in place, urban local bodies, municipal corporations, and institutes like Shalini is doing, they have a huge role to play. And to put these systems in place, we should start beginning to task these NGOs and institutes like Shalini's to start developing these models by which the market is created, whether it's e-platforms, whether they are equivalent on mom and pop stores or whatever. So those markets have to be created by the government so that both the seller and the buyer have a meeting point to discuss the things. Okay, and now I think I run out of time. I probably spent much more time than I should have, and took everybody's time. But by and large, is that the net output, I would say, is to see how best we can leverage this talk. So this concludes my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this detailed talk today. And I'll take your attention to a very particular point where you said that integrated mega recycling parks that need to be created here in India. A small country like Singapore is having around 6 integrated recycling parks. And India is not having even one of that capacity.
So we have a chance now. Praveen is going to set up India's first integrated recycling park, including aircraft. So
So, sir, I thank you so much for providing this detailed presentation today. And thank you, Mr. Praveen, for being with us today and providing your time and insights into the aerospace and automobile sector in Telangana. And now I request Beckham to put up a vote of thanks and close the event for the day.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of the Global Institute for Circular Economy and Sustainable Development Goals, I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Commodore Samadar and Mr. Praveen, for giving us such valuable insights into not just the auto sector, but the aerospace and aviation sectors as well. As a person who loves aviation, it truly gave me a great insight on everything that we can expect in the future. And it's definitely not what we think it's going to be. So it was truly enlightening. And once again, I would like to thank you for the honor of being on our web event. And I hope that everyone who sees this webinar online learns something and gains the same insights that I did. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.